Well, hey, everybody. Happy Monday. I guess I'll give it a few more minutes to see if people show up. How's the Zoom COVID treating everybody since the semester start?
Packet loss for days.
Yeah, I heard the hurricanes were causing some internet related outages all up and down the East Coast. 2 p.m. I mean, that sounds like my normal college days, right? Motivation's an all-time low. Yeah, okay. I'm actually living in Seneca right now. Been here for a good while. I'll talk more about me once we get a few more people in. It is a pretty good day, actually. It's a little humid, but you know, nice and overcast, not too hot. Ooh, hammock. Yeah, good call. If I didn't have to actually have a decent setup to broadcast and share my screen and code and stuff like that, yeah, I would probably be chilling at the pool or hammock or out on my swing. If I were in y'all's position, I would totally be there. Oh, yeah, I am a gamer. Yes, sir. PC Master Race all the way. I actually just got back into League of Legends like 2 days ago and haven't played much since 2010. So that's what I'm playing right now. I also have Doom Eternal and the whatever the Star Wars Dark Souls clone is on my backlist to play at somebody. Fallen Order. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'd have 2 master's degrees if it weren't for League of Legends.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure League of Legends got me to give up on my master's degree. Quake? What do you mean, Quake? I mean, you could play Quake on a calculator nowadays. Yeah, I played a decent amount of Rocket League, played some Risk of Rain. Haven't played Civ, the latest Civ, but probably have maybe 100 or so hours in the one before that. Overwatch, I played a decent amount of Overwatch, bought Overwatch 2, but haven't played it. Witcher 3 is great. Yeah, one game. No, I haven't played Fall Guys. Yeah, I know. I can't get to them all. I mean, come on. I don't have all this free time to wake up at 2 p.m. like the rest of you guys. Jeez. Wizard 101. Is that a Epic or Steam game? Okay. Let me just add that to my browser real quick. Just so I can go look that up later. Oh, it's really old. I don't mind old games. It depends on how good the UI is. I mean, I have friends that still love Ultima Online, and as much of that as I played back in the day, I cannot get through the UI nowadays. Like, give me like keyboard 1, 2, and 3, or I'm out. Kingdom Come Deliverance, haven't played that. Swoter, yeah, played a ton of that. OSRS, what's that? Goat Simulator. Now you're just trolling me. Come on now. All right, we got 40 people in here. It's 4:05. I suppose I'll go ahead and get started. Some of you may be a little bit worried about the project due on Sunday, so we'll see about that. It depends on how much we get through today and Wednesday. If we can get our AWS stuff set up between now and then and talk a little bit about Apache, then that'll be good to go. If you guys can distract me a little bit, maybe I'll push it out to like next Wednesday. So, you know, no pressure or anything. Ball's in your court. First, I guess a little bit about me. I've been teaching this class this is my 4th fall semester. I only teach it on fall semesters, but primarily because I have a job and I've always had a job. I don't teach for a living. I teach because it's fun, because I like seeing, you know, all y'all students learn something. And when I went through the computer science undergrad here, there wasn't a damn thing about web programming or HTML or any of that. I know there's a database course now, and even that can't speak to it this year, but I've heard terrible things in previous years. So yeah, I worked in CCIT from about 2009 till earlier this year. I got a new job about into July. When I was working for CCIT, I did surprise a ton of web programming, worked for the mobile group doing backend for my.Clemson for a little while, and then moved into infrastructure. Infrastructure as code, helping manage the VMware stuff, creating Linux images, and just putting together system architectures and stuff like that. I got up to the point where I would sit in on DR meetings and find some old application that they wanted to do a DR test on and say, all right, well, we have to change all of these things about your application, and we have to set up extra instances on the West Coast, and we have to get your DNS working through the load balancer. And so it grew into, it started with me doing web programming, and then from there I learned the OS, and then from there I learned how to put OSs together to talk in a cluster. And then I started getting into networking, load balancers, DNS, TCP connections, that kind of thing. Pretty much got to do whatever I wanted, whatever was fun to do. I would just find a problem and fix it, kind of thing. But throughout all that, I still loved that I got to start with web programming. And so whenever there needed to be a new tool spun up, last fall or something like that, I would spend 2 or 3 days writing a little PHP backend and React front end, just to stand up a little tool that's maybe 500 lines of code running Node.js or PHP for the backend, host the front end as static files in Apache, and move on to the next thing. Before you guys ask, yes, we did do PHP in the last 3 iterations of this course, but I'm going to skip it this time. Some of you may be dismayed. Some of you may be very happy that we aren't talking about PHP this time. It was just, yeah, and nothing with value was law. Okay, fair enough. I kind of wanted to talk, I used it to talk about like the templating languages like PHP and ASPX that kind of got us to where we are today as a web programming world, but it kind of just confused people because it was just one project out of 6 or 7 or something in that language, and maybe 2 weeks, and then move on to the next thing. And people just didn't really have enough exposure to it to grasp it well enough to be tested on it or to write good projects in it. So we're going to skip that. We're still going to do some Apache. We're going to stand up our own Linux AWS instances, just one, your own VPC, your make sure all that works. You'll SSH into your one instance, and that'll be where you'll run your code. That'll be the URL that you send me will be with that public IP address in it for me to grade your projects. Sometimes you'll also have to send me the code, but only if it's code for projects that I can't see the code in the browser. So for the first 2, maybe 3 projects, you won't really have to send me any code because I can just go into the browser and inspect the HTML that I get into my browser from your server and grade it that way. So once we get done with Apache, we're going to move on to Node.js. And because I've taken PHP out, I'm a little bit fuzzy on how that transition is going to go. But, you know, I'm sure you guys are all just fairly familiar with procrastination. I'll get it done before I have to teach it. And so, yeah, now I just got a job in July working for Bos Allen Hamilton out of North Charleston, and I'm doing work through their VA contract, developing infrastructure for Kubernetes clusters in AWS GovCloud. I can't talk too much more about that because, you know, it's government contract work and stuff like that. So I can't give away secrets of our contracting, stuff like that. But I do want to throw a little bit of Docker into the end. No, I don't have launch codes. I don't even have a security clearance yet. I started my security clearance, but apparently it's going to take 3 to 6 months or some crap like that. That's not, well, I don't know. That might be launch codes. I have no idea. They don't give me access to that. I'm only public trust security clearance whenever I get it. So I'm not secret clearance or anything like that. And I don't even get to deal with the non-prod or prod code bases. We actually make the framework and give it over to the prod team and the non-prod team, and they use that framework to stand up their Kubernetes clusters. We don't use EKS or any of the built-in AWS Kubernetes stuff. We just spin up our own nodes and put them behind a network load balancer in AWS and mount up S3 and ELB storage and stuff like that, so, or EBS storage. So, anybody have any questions for me so far? Anybody want to know more about why the hell I'm teaching this course or what I expect from you all? Or what you can expect from me? Why am I teaching this course? No, you can't get free A's. You can't even buy A's. There are, I mean, you know, I guess it's free as in like you don't have to pay for it. And if you put in the work, you get an A. So, you know, that's free, right? I'm teaching this course because I've always loved to teach. I never really got a chance to in my undergrad and in my grad school career. I got 28 hours through my grad school and then got it in about 20 hours in, started working at a job that was teaching me more than my classes were at CCIT. So I kept trying to do that and just cared less and less, and eventually was like, why am I paying the university when I get to learn while the university is paying me? So fortunately, I got enough master's credits to be accredited as far as Clemson University is concerned to design and teach this course. So here I am today, but I don't have a master's. I don't have a PhD. Because I don't have a PhD, I'm not a professor from what I understand reading the Wikipedia article for professors. I believe professors implies that you have a PhD and I don't. So you can call me Teacher Baker or Mr. Baker or really just Craig. I don't care. I'm going to probably call all y'all by your first names, and I'm not like super special or like going to be hurt or pissed if y'all are like, hey, Craig, can we do this? I'll be like, yes, sure, or no. So yeah, that's why I'm teaching, but I like to do it. And it doesn't hurt that it's like an extra, you know, couple grand per year just to chill. How would I describe my teaching style? Pretty off the cuff. I got normally other semesters I would just get up behind the podium, plug my laptop in, project my screen, show what I'm doing, talk about what I'm doing, walk you guys through beginnings of how to write the next project, or talk about where to find information to read up on whatever topic we're learning about. I'll talk through some of that, but part of my class is I first of all believe that Google is your best friend, because Google's still my best friend. I know enough languages that I have to be like, how do I do this in this language? Because I know like 20 of them. So I Google stuff every day of my life, and I think this should be a class to prepare you for a professional career. So I'm not about pen and paper tests. Quizzes in previous semesters were open books, open notes, open browser. I want you guys to know how to find the knowledge you're looking for and have enough knowledge to form good search queries in Google. Are we going to be graded on project does this, or will it be a project does this and has this? A little bit of both. I'll try to be pretty explicit about the grading rubrics, or the rating rubrics, however you want to say that. I'll try to say, like, look, I want this to be on the page, this to be on the page, this to work this way. And then if there's certain things I'm looking for in how you did it, I'll be explicit about that as well. Some of our first projects may say, or will definitely say, your HTML should not have any JavaScript inside of it. You should link to a JavaScript file, and that should load and link itself to all the nodes. So even if you have, for those of you that have messed with HTML, an on-click equals quote and then a JavaScript function, no, don't want any of that. I want your JavaScript to attach itself to nodes based on IDs once the HTML page is rendered, so that everything's kind of got a separation of duties. So there will be that kind of, that doesn't answer your question, but hopefully, Nathaniel or Nathan? I'm gonna have to ask. Either way, really. Okay, cool. So Nathan, yeah, hopefully that answers your question, or at least gives you a little bit more insight. I don't know, normally I did do closed book, closed notes for the midterm and the final, and pen and paper, because it was either that or the lockdown browser, and it was pretty unanimous in all of my previous courses that everybody hated the lockdown browser. Even doing that, I would sit up at the front of the class, and if somebody wanted me to Google something, I would throw it up on the projector within reason. I'm not going to Google the exact quote of the question. You have to give me decently good search terms. This year, I may move the tests into Canvas. I'm not entirely sure how I want to do that. We'll see how that goes as we get closer to that. And maybe I just won't be as strict and let you guys do the same sort of thing as the quizzes for the midterm and the final. But we'll see how that goes. I may be persuadable, but I do need to check down how Canvas currently does that kind of thing. And I'm not going to sit here and look at like 2 boards in Zoom of everybody's screens trying to make sure none of y'all are cheating. There's levels of care, and some of those I don't really have. But if somebody makes it obvious that they're cheating, maybe I'll just put a lot of essay questions into the, or short answer questions into the midterm and the final. And if it looks like you're cheating on tons of blocks of code reuse in a project, or if it looks like you're cheating by copying exactly somebody else's answer, you're gonna have to make me go to the academic board and bring up a case, and I don't want to do that. So just like, use some good judgment. Don't be stupid, and don't make me have to put in extra work, because then I'm not going to be happy. Yeah, use some common sense. Any other questions about the course format? This will be Zoom all semester, because I work up until 4, and like was said earlier, I really don't look forward to going onto campus or getting my nose swabbed just to go onto campus and see you guys. Actually, I think I'm going to like this a little bit more because I have open broadcast studio here. I can actually share different scenes, and actually have a much better thing. It'll much better like presentation of what I'm working on and how I'm working on it. And I can actually see all your names. I'm terrible at learning names when people don't have their names in front of them. So I would have people sitting in class asking me questions. And if they didn't ask me questions in Slack too, I probably wouldn't know their name till the end of the year or something. So I know like this person has done these things on this test and these projects, and they've asked me these things in Slack, but putting that name to a face or the person that's actually in class, I'm not really great at that. Yeah, so this might actually be a little bit better for me, and hopefully you guys get a little bit more hammock time and don't have to sit in class. What else? I do spend a lot of time on Slack because I'm a gamer. I mean, I'm just sitting here. I got like 3 monitors. I got a decent gaming rig. If I'm not playing games, I'm watching something on my computer or reading a book at my computer or whatever, like Kindle. What else? So I'll pretty much always have Slack up on the other screen. So, you know, I'll probably go to bed around 10. I prefer if you're going to ask me questions, ask it in a general channel and not to me directly. So if somebody else has the same question, I don't have to answer it 5 times. And if you guys aren't used to Slack, we'll talk a little bit about that. And there's some Slack etiquette that kind of makes a decent amount of sense. If you guys aren't used to it, you can just Google Slack etiquette and I'll kind of give you an idea. Any other questions? I haven't played any ranked games yet. I just got to level 10 and got custom runes like yesterday. I don't stream. I probably could, but I've tried and I just get too much into the game to care about what the Twitch chat is doing. So it doesn't make for a good stream. I have a friend that lives in Sweden that streamed professionally for 2.5 years, and now he's also teaching. So I did spend a lot of time in Twitch. I was one of the mods on his channel, but yeah, don't stream. Any other questions? Does everybody have an AWS account? Let's test out this Zoom thing. Click this little yes button, the participants thing, or the thumbs up or something like that. If you have a Zoom or an AWS account. All right, couple of no's. Okay. So I guess at this point, it's already almost 4:30. So I guess I'm just gonna dive into, let me boot up OBS and make sure it's got the right windows. Nope, not that. 1 second. And I'll start talking about AWS and our Canvas page on AWS. We'll see how far into that we can get. I may ramble a little bit and get onto tangents. I hope that's okay, but we'll get through it together. Canvas.clemson.edu. Yeah, sign in. And let me do preview. Okay. So let's do the share screen. This thing. Okay, so trying to get into Canvas. We'll see if this actually lets me in today. I didn't actually get my Duo re-enabled till like Saturday at noon, so you'll have to excuse how long it took me to get this course set up, as well as missing class on Wednesday. Now the question is, how do I see the chat while I'm in projector mode? There we go. Okay. All right, so let's go check this out. We got setting up our AWS server. All right, so let's log into AWS. Nope, that link is bad. Okay. So if you just Google AWS console, that's the first, definitely the first issue with my documentation in Canvas, but let's see if I can get in. I suggest you set up multi-factor auth, but you probably won't, and that's fine. I'm not going to grade that. I have no way of knowing if you do or don't. Okay, so we're up in AWS. Anybody have any questions so far? No. Yeah, I didn't really talk much about it, so I guess we can move on a little bit. All right, so the first thing we need to do is go into the Ec2 instance or the Ec2 service in AWS. So we see here here's our dashboard for EC2. Doesn't really matter what EC2 stands for. I think it's Elastic Cloud Cluster or something like that. I don't know. What does EC2 stand for? Elastic Compute Cloud. Okay, so I got 2 words out of 3. You won't be tested on that. The first thing, I believe, okay, so this just jumps into creating an EC2 instance, and then from creating that, we're going to make all of the other things out of that page. So launch instance. Ubuntu 18.04, this is our Linux operating system that we're going to choose to spin up our instance. I suggest 64-bit ARM. I do not suggest doing ARM at this point ever. T2 micro, free tier eligible. This means that you get 1 CPU, 1 gig of memory, and it's not going to charge you when it's running. So you should save a decent amount of money using this. If you want a bigger instance, feel free, but this is all you're going to need. So instead of going straight to review and launch, we're going to step through this and configure all these things, because all this stuff's probably going to be blank for you. Number of instances, obviously we only want 1. We're going to create a new VPC. Let me make sure I'm doing this in the order I told you guys about. Yep, from configuration instances, create new VPC. So we go over here, create VPC. I'm going to call this CPSC 3750. The Cider block. I'll talk more about Cider blocks, but we're just going to kind of pound through some of this today so you guys can actually get this stuff up and running. If you want to read about Cider blocks here, you can, and there might be a question or 2 on Cider blocks on the first quiz, so I'm going to go over it more on Wednesday. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So for now, you know what? I guess I could talk about Cider blocks a little bit. Where's my OBS? Does this thing? Cider block is an IP address. Its IP address has got 4 numbers with dots in between them. This is for IPv4, 10.0.0.0. Okay, so this is a valid IP address. Every one of these here numbers has to be between 0 and 255. Normally at the end here, these zeros and these 255s are kind of reserved for routers, stuff like that. So you can have an IP address that's 1.2.3.4 or .54. You cannot have one that's 256. That is the biggest, that is above the biggest number that you can have. Why do y'all think the biggest number is 255 per one of these dots? Anybody have an idea? Because it's 8 bits. It's 1 byte per dot. So an IP address is 4 bytes. 1 byte per dot / number 4 bytes. If I could type for an IP address, at least in V4. We're not going to talk too much about V6 because V6 is huge. Amazon does reserve 4 addresses automatically. It depends. I think they reserve 4 per subnet, not in the entire VPC. So yeah, if you had a VPC with multiple subnets, you could actually lose more than 4 addresses in your total VPC. But a cider, so if any of you guys have, if any of y'all have done back in the day when I was in high school, which I don't want to date myself, but it was before 2000. When I was in high school, we did some LAN parties. We tried to bring all of our desktops together. We had an actual 16-port hub we would plug stuff into. We were running a version of Windows old enough. I think we were running 98 or something like that. And because we didn't know any better, and the technology didn't really readily exist, we didn't have a router plugged up to this thing. So we had to actually specify our IP addresses in subnet masks. So we'd be sitting, a ton of high school kids in a room, all trying to get connected to the network, like, hey, does anybody have the .17 address? No? Okay, I'll take that. And so everybody had to type in their own address and their own subnet mask. A subnet mask, 255, 255, 255, 0. And I believe that subnet mask is saying, okay, so if I have an address that's 192.168.0.0, or that's like 25.0. This subnet mask says all 3 of these all of the bits that are 1 here are bits that are part of the network that you're in here. So all of this is part of the network, and only these 8 bits are part of something that's in the network. So this subnet here specifies a network that's 8 bits wide, or can hold 255 IP addresses. For example, this could instead be a 0 here, and then this network would hold both of these 16 bits. So these 8 bits and these 8 bits. So far, so good. OBS is on top of my text editor. Why is OBS on top of my text editor? Is that better? Okay, cool. All right, so all good so far. So, and hopefully you guys learned all this in your networking class. Please tell me networking was a prereq for this. Anybody not take networking? Okay, cool. Because last time I taught this was a special topics course, and I could not set up a prereq, and so I had like a couple of business majors that were taking this course, and they didn't do well because they didn't have the networking background. But so we got a subnet, we got this thing. Instead of trying to send both of these to a friend, like, hey, here's all the numbers that describe my computer and the network it's on, taking it this semester, okay, that's cool. We're not going to go too much into networking, but we at least need to know about Cider and IP address spaces. So one other thing is this 255, this could be less. So it could be for example, if we had the bits 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 0, 0, 0. If we converted that into a number, I believe it's going to be 128. And so that would also grab the first 8 bits of these, or the first 4 bits of these. So just to note that it does not have to end on the dot boundaries. You can have, this would be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this would be 12 bits would be your subnet. That's important because Cider address for this above thing here, for this, the Cider address for that would be 192.168.25.0/12. Because that 12 is how many bits are ones in the subnet mask. Some of you that have seen Cider addresses before may say, and Amazon will complain if I were to do this, if I were to just take this and put it in here, it does not think that's a valid Cider address. The reason it doesn't think that's a valid Cider address, let's just change this back to something on an even boundary. So if we change it to 24, 24 means these three sets of these 3 bytes are part of the subnet, and and this byte is not part of the subnet. When you put that into this 24, there we go, it likes it. The reason it likes it is because Amazon wants all of the bits that are not part of that 24 to be 0. Yes, you're right. You can't see my AWS. Let's do this. Let's turn off my terminal. And let's move this up here. And even then, you still won't be able to see it. Okay. All right. That's wonderful. Let's just do this. I'll figure this out eventually. Yeah, that's super tiny and annoying, isn't it? I'm just gonna have to toggle between these, aren't I? Okay, so if I do, let's have the turn, no, let's have Sublime up top. There we go. So I can just turn Sublime on and off. Is that too tiny? You can have the second, you can see it fine, okay. You can have the second byte be a greater number than the subnet number. Yes, I think so. So it all turns into bytes. So if I were to convert this into, so all of these can be whatever they want. The subnet for this is 255.255.255.0. And these 255s only come from that /24. So it doesn't really correspond to this. I think this has to be, you may be right that this has to be less. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, probably these bytes have to be less than the values that they add up to here. So yeah. There is one caveat though. Back when I was doing the LAN parties, sometimes you wanted to communicate to your friends what your IP address is, exactly what your IP address is, not just, so if I do it like this, this is describing an IP address range. This is saying, all right, I'm describing a range that where the network itself is 24 bits and the remaining 8 bits are the range of IP addresses that are available inside this network. So this describes a network range of 255 addresses because we can go to from 0 to 255 here. If I made this, let's say if I dropped this to 0 and I made this /16, okay, all right, then this would be 255 squared because we have 200, we have basically, instead of 8 bits, we have 16 bits, okay? 16 bits are available for addresses inside the range, inside that network, and the network starts with these bits here. But if at a LAN party I wanted to say, hey, my IP address is exactly this thing, 192.168.25.16, and my subnet mask is this, and let's say my subnet mask is 255. Let's just make it a little bit easier. So if I wanted to send somebody all that information, I can use Cider to do that. I can just say, here's my Cider address. So that's a way of combining my IP address and a subnet, and it's not a Cider format that defines a range. But it is a Cider format that you can use to condense down what you have to send if you're sending something to another system. If you want to say, hey, I'm on this network and this is my IP address, you can send that to somebody and they'll understand what that means. For AWS's purpose, and you may want to remember this a little bit because that might be on a quiz at some point, that yes, there's other reasons to do this. But for AWS, they just want zeros for anything that's not part of this /16 at the end. All right, so that's a really quick Cider thing. Let me switch back to this. If we go back to setting up AWS, this talks a little bit about what I've already talked about. There are 3 blocks of private IP address networks that are defined in an OBS is still blocking. Of course it is. Okay, I'm gonna get better at that. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll just move OBS way the hell over here. There we go. Is that blocking? This is why I have multiple monitors. I should probably use them. Okay. So there are 3 in RFC 1918, which is a 1918. I believe that's the number. That is a real internet RFC, and it defines address allocation for private networks. So if there's 3 different ranges, it's 10.000/8. So that's the really big one. There's a media one, 192.168.0.8. Okay, wait, you can't see that. I know. There. So you got 192.168.0.0/16. And you also have, what is it, 197. Hold on, I gotta Google that. .254 RFC 1918 address. Oh, just what is it? All right, back to Google. Wikipedia, help me out. Where's the Cider? Okay. Wow, it's just those 3. Okay. So I was wrong. It's those 3. 192.168 and 172.16 is the 3rd one. Back to Sublime. So those are the 3 ranges. If you've ever looked at your home networking, your modem, it will either be giving you probably it'll normally, especially Linksys and stuff, they give out addresses in this range. If you ever wondered why your Windows or Mac computer or phone thinks its address is 192.168, it's because your router is creating a private IP address space behind it, and all of that goes through your modem's single IP address. So later on, we'll have to know what your real outgoing single IP address is. And so we Google, hey Google, what's my IP address? And it will tell you, okay, look, it is this thing. And let me see if I can get to my terminal. Where's my terminal? And if I do ifconfig here, it says that my address is 192.168.118.118. So this is my internal network IP address. This is the IP address that my computer has on my internal network. And then this is the IP address of my modem, the IP address that everything's talking out to the internet for. When we talk about allowing your instance to be talked to from certain IP addresses, this is the one we're talking about. And you can't see that. This one. This is the one you're talking about. I'm going to have to get a lot better at this switching back and forth. Sorry about that. I'll have to say, hey, Schmoogle from here on out. Or did that trigger it too? Okay, so you're going to hack my IP. Okay, yeah, good luck with that. I don't really have any port forward set up right now. So here, back to the browser, got the browser shared. All right, we good. We're going to make a 10.000/24 as our, really? No, that's not a good idea. That is not one of the defined private networks. It is / yeah. Okay, so that's wrong. Don't look at that. We're going to create the biggest subnet we can in this VPC because private IP addresses are free. 0/8. So our VPC, our virtual private cloud, the thing that we're going to put all of our subnets and computers and everything in, of which there will only be one, but we're going to make it really big anyway. Maybe you can reuse this for something else and you can change the name later and do cool stuff with it because it'll already be set up. Okay. So okay, fine, 16, whatever. We'll make it a /16. Yay, it was created. Now we go close that and we go back up here and we refresh this thing because it doesn't show it and we go find our CPSC 3750. No subnets found in this VPC. Okay, next step, we go to create a subnet. Anybody have any questions? Am I going too slow? Am I going too fast? Yes, I'm recording it locally, and I need to figure out where I'm going to put it. I might actually just put it up unlisted on YouTube. The one I listed on Canvas is this one. Let me see where it says. Okay, so it kind of skips it. So create new VPC. All right, let me just do this real quick. Edit. Use a cider range of 10.0.0.0/16. There we go. And I'm also going to change this one real quick to /24 because that's what we use for the subnet, just to make things even numbers. Okay. Can I please explain Cider a little bit further? Do you have a more specific question, Alex? How do they relate exactly? Okay, so let me switch back to good old Sublime. Okay, so this part here is your IP address. This number right here is how many bits of that IP address are ones in the subnet mask. So this is identical to this. The first 16 bits have to be ones, and that's what this means. If this were 24, it would be the same thing as 255 here. They relate in that the subnet mask is, I think, ANDed or ORed. So if we were to break this out, and I'm going to make this simple, I'm just going to go to, I don't know, like 16 dot. So let's do another example. Let's leave that there. Okay, so if I had something that was 16.16.16.16, that's my IP address. That's going to be, that's going to look like these bits. All right, and if I had a subnet mask that was 255.255.0.0, that looks like that looks like that. So if we line these up, and let's see, I think we OR them. Let me remember how that works. I think it's an XOR. Yeah. So if we do Boolean logic against these, we get a If the first condition's false and the second condition's false, then the third condition's false. If the first condition's true and the second condition's false, the third one's false. So the only way, if we XOR these two things together, the only way that we're going to get ones out of the bottom is if it's a 1 up here and it's a 1 down here. So the subnet mask helps turn this above thing, our IP address, into that. Is that 15? Yeah, that's 15. Okay, fine. You're right, and it is 15. No, the name tags don't matter. You can name it whatever you want. You may want to name it all CPS, something that you know is related to this class so that you can clean it all up later, unless you don't care about cleaning it up later. Then you can call it my first VPC, or Craig told me not to name it this. I don't care. Alex, does that give a little bit, shed a little bit more light to how they relate? This is also /16 in Cider speak. So instead of talking about these two numbers, we just say it's this /16, and that tells everything that it's this. How I got line 28. Okay, so yeah, these two, your subnet and your IP addresses are XOR'd. The US East stuff doesn't matter. You can choose whatever you want as long as you choose the same one. 1 XOR 0 is not 1. You have to have true in both columns to have a result of true. The result of true is only shows up. Everything else is false unless both condition 1 and condition 2. You're talking about ORing. Oh, that is an AND gate. Huh. So they're ANDed together. Yeah. So, you know, that's not important. That's, you know, the logic gate that they're doing is not important. The point is you're supposed to use the subnet mask to lop off anything that's 0 and make it 0 down here. So they're ANDed. Sorry. First day, you know, shaking it out. I got to get into it. I found the right logic table. I just called it XOR. Yeah, nobody likes this stuff anyway. You don't have to know that it's ANDed together. All you need to know is these being 1 help the computer figure out, let's go back. These things here in your subnet being 1 helps the computer to figure out that these bits are part of your network and the rest of the bits are IP addresses in your network. And furthermore, this 16 means that these 16 bits are part of your network and not part of your actual IP address range. So that's kind of, yeah, basic plan's fine. Some people have been using AWS Educate accounts. I haven't done AWS Educate. I don't have AWS Educate, so I can't help you if you get stuck with that. But it should have everything you need based on the documentation I read this weekend. But yes, I think a basic plan should be fine. So, right, so these two things ANDed together. Basically, this 16 is the /16 on your Cider, and using your IP address in your /16, we know that, for example, if I have a 10.0.0.0/16, that's going to be 16. The first 16 bits are part of the network, and the second 16 bits are things that are in the network, which means we have 255 squared IP addresses to play with in our VPC. Let's figure out what that is. So we have 65,025 addresses in our VPC. Not all of those will be available to us, but that's only because AWS will actually put some things like routers into that subnet or into that address as well. Okay. I'm going to move on for a little bit. Alex or anybody else, if y'all still have questions, hit me up after class or in Slack, or we can go back over it a little bit more. There's also some links to read up on IPv4 Cider Blocks here that may be beneficial to you. So I don't know, give that a read. Let me know if you still have questions. I'm going to see how much more of this I can get through in the 20 minutes we have available. I'm going to name my subnet the same thing, 3750. Except with a 3. VPC, I'm going to choose the VPC we made earlier. Availability zone, just pick one that you like. I picked the first one. As long as you know what it's in, it doesn't matter. We'll talk more about availability zones at a later date, but you just kind of need to remember what it is. Oh, you already got project 1 done. Look at you. Can we use an existing AWS instance? If we made one for a different class, it's Ubuntu as well. You can, as long as you remember the PIM key for it and you know your way around it enough to like get the right versions of Apache and Node.js and stuff like that installed. I don't have any problems with that, but if you run into problems, I'll try and help you out, but you might have to remake another instance at another point. You could always turn that instance off and start a new one, or clone that instance to a new one. I'll help you out if you run into any problems, but using an existing one should be fine. IPv4 Cider block for the subnet 10.0.0.0/24. So out of this /16, we have these 2 bytes, these 16 bits are part of the IP addresses available to the VPC. We're making a subnet inside our VPC that only goes from 0 to 255 at this very last byte. This allows us to make, do the math with me now, quick maths, we can make 255 identical subnets because we're not changing this bit. So we could make a 10.000/24. We could make another subnet that's 10.0.1.0/24 and then 2.0/24. So we can make 255 subnets, each with 255 IP addresses. We're only making one, but just trying to get that math into your head. Okay, so cool. We created that subnet. Now we need to go here, refresh again, choose comp sci, choose that. Auto assign public IP. We want to auto assign our public IP. This is how we're going to SSH into your instance and how I'm going to grade your instance. You're going to need that. You do not want to use an elastic IP address. Those cost more money. Just give it an auto-assigned public IP. Placement group, nope. Capacity reservation, don't care. IAM role, nope. Don't give your thing an IAM role because then if somebody hacks into your instance, they can use that role to spin up other stuff. Don't do it. Shutdown behavior, stop. Yep. And shared hardware, all that stuff is good. And if we go down here and yep. Okay, so all that's good. And just to be sure, VPC and subnet, auto-assign public IP, leave everything else as is and continue to add storage. And in storage, we're going to use a general SSD storage of 8 gigabytes, which I believe is the default option. Add storage, 8, general purpose SSD, GP2, yep, fine. Next, add tags, don't care about any tags. Continue through tags to security groups, create a new security group. All right. I'm gonna create a new security group. I'm gonna call this CPSC 3750. Hopefully you're noticing a trend, and I'm gonna call this web server SG. And just because, description, yeah. All right, so here we have, these are your, if you've ever done, firewalls or anything like that, There are no firewalls inside your instance. It's disabled by default. Your operating system is not blocking any packets. The security group sits directly outside of your instance on the network. It's like a virtual appliance on your network. Each one of these protects packets from going in and out of your computer. So it's like not part of your operating system at all. It's not going to bog down your computer. You don't have to restart your instance when you change this. This gets changed directly outside of your instance. And there are inbound and outbound security groups. We only ever worry about outbound. I would suggest, specifically for SSH, that you go look at your IP address. And normally speaking, your IP address might change if your modem restarts or something like that. You may have a different IP address when you're on campus versus off campus, because that's definitely going to change. But if you're just working from home, you could pretty safely just say .0/16 or /24. Because even though your IP address may change, chances are your ISP is not going to give you something way outside of the subnet of the /24 you already have. Because your ISP is also doing this sort of routing. So it knows that certain subnets route to certain geographical areas. So chances are they're not going to change it from this thing to like 18 at the front or something like that. Chances are they don't even own that different block of IP addresses. But if you're going to be on campus, you're going to be off campus. I have not made this recommendation before, and I believe my notes are probably a little stricter. Let's see. Yep. Ask Google for your IP /24, add that for SSH. Really, since you're using a PIM file to protect this thing, and it's only going to be up for like, 6 months maybe, it's going to take people a long while to hack into it, even if they just look through and find any open 22 ports in AWS. So I'm going to leave it as open to everything. You can lock it down further if you want. As long as you don't assign an IAM role to this thing and you don't put your AWS password directly on the box where somebody can find it, it's not going to be that big of a deal. If it does happen to get hacked into, you can just turn it off and change your SSH. I don't know. You can make a new one real quick. If you're a little bit worried about, I mean, I've only had one AWS instance be hacked into my entire life, and I had it running for like 6 years or something like that. So if you're worried about it, lock this down. You can also have multiple rules. So you can have like the campus IPv4 range and your home IPv4 range and all this other stuff. I'm just going to go simple. Yes, you can add more subnets. Is there a reason we set the subnet instead of just default? What do you mean? Oh, you mean for the security group, this thing? Is that what you mean, Tommy? Oh, when I set up the instance. Just because I wanted you guys to make a secure or a subnet. I don't think there is a default subnet sometimes when you create your VPC. So we wanted to go in and actually make one. If you already have a VPC and subnet made, then it will try and use the default there. I already have one made, and so it tried to use the default, but you want to make sure that the subnet you choose is the right one for your VPC. So you have the ability to pick whatever you want. Again, I'm labeling all this stuff I'm creating with CPSC 3750 so I can know which subnets are related to this versus me just tinkering with something. And when I want to delete something, I know that I'm deleting the right stuff. Yes, you can add extra SSH rules. You can add as many as you want here, or you can add as many security group rules as you want. You can have them apply to SSH or any other port. So this works a lot like routing tables, where it will go down this list until it finds something that says, yes, allow it, and then it will stop looking at this list. So I'm going to add, and I don't think we'll be using HTTPS, but I'm going to go ahead and add that too. It is perfectly fine to have your HTTP and HTTPS open to the world. In fact, you will need to have them open to the world because I'm going to need to be able to test this. And although you have seen my current IP address, maybe I will be at the beach grading your exams or grading your projects. So these two ports, your HTTP and HTTPS ports, port 80 and port 443, which by the way, you can just do custom TCP rule and type 443 in there. That works just as well. This is just a quick, easy way to say, I want to allow this protocol and this protocol works on this port. Okay. This needs to be, and this is allowing both all IPv4 and this colon thing here, that's allowing all IPv6. Is changing the source to anywhere the same as what you have? Yes. See, it just grays it out. So that works as well too. So these are the three I'm going to set up. Again, your SSH, you may want to lock down a little bit more. You may not. Whatever, it's fine by me. Review and launch. All this stuff looks good. We already went over it. Hopefully. Choose an existing key pair or create a new one. If you've never messed with this before, you're going to have to create a new key pair. It will download your key pair to your computer. This is the only time you will ever be able to download this from AWS. If you want to change the key pair or you lose it, you pretty much have to create an entire new instance, as far as I know. So don't lose this key pair. Put it in your drive, put it in Dropbox, put it as a message to yourself in Slack. Don't put it as a message to me or in general, because anybody that has this key pair can log into your system if they know your IP address. I'm going to use an existing key pair because I already have one. And they make you check, yes, I acknowledge that I have access to this. Let me double check. Let's see, do I have, where is this thing? Yeah, AWS personal.pim. All right, I totally have that. And yeah, I know I wasn't showing you guys my console there. But yes, okay, I have this thing, launch instance. Beep, boop, beep, boop. Okay. We go to view instances, and I'm just going to put CPSC in here. We didn't actually put a tag on our instance, did we? But this is the one that's spinning up, so I'm just going to add a tag here, CPSC 3750. Now I know it's this one and not some of these other things I've been playing around with. All those are stopped. This one's pending. It's initializing. And it has this IP address. So while that's spinning up, let's see how far through these notes we got. Launch, bloop, bloop, bloop. Now our instance is booted up. We created a VPC, a subnet, an Ec2 instance. The Ec2 instance is running this. If we try to log into it now, it's not going to work. We can talk into it, but we can't get packets back out of it because we haven't created an internet gateway yet. So go to VPC dashboard, and I'm going to try and get this done before 5:15. VPC, right? So services, VPC, and internet gateway. Create internet gateway. CP, same thing. Create internet gateway. All right, it's created. Now we have to attach it to a VPC. I think my notes say that. Okay, so create, right click to attach to VPC, or you can just click this button up here. Select a VPC. There we go. Attach it. All right, so that works. Now we can get packets into it, but our network does not know that packets bound for certain IP addresses get passed through the internet gateway. So we have to go look at route tables. And that's what it's talking to here. So if we go to our VPC, nope. And we go to click on this one, and we go down here at the bottom, it's got a route table that it's linked to. If we click on that route table, we click on routes, edit routes. Okay, so it's saying, all right, if the destination is anything inside the address space we made for our VPC, we want to route it locally to other computers in our VPC. What we need is, and this works the same way as our security groups, where it'll try to test this. If this condition fails, it'll go to the next one. So we want our second one, if it's not a 10.00016, this will catch everything that does not pass this first test. And we want it to route to our internet gateway that we just made. Save routes. Okay. So now let's see if I can get this thing to work. What was my IP address? 1 second. Back to the browser. Services, EC2, running instances. And let's copy this. And let's go back to our terminal. SSH-I to pass in our keys. What is it? Oh, it's just right here. Okay. And then we want to do the username for this is Ubuntu. If I can type Ubuntu at IP address. So this is the username we're logging in with. In other types of instances like AWS, Amazon, Linux, or something like that, or I don't know, there's a couple other ones, but some of those users will be EC2-user. But since we spun up an Ubuntu image, the username that they create for us is Ubuntu. Yes. And I'm in. Let me do one thing real quick. chmod 777 AWS personal. Okay. So normally you guys, if you just created your PIM key and you try to SSH, you just created it, you downloaded it, and you have it accessible through some sort of SSH client. By the way, I'm using Windows Subsystem for Linux here. Feel free to set that up. I also have the Windows Terminal app installed, but you can just access your subsystem through a number of ways. You can also use Bitvice. You can use Terminal on your Mac. You can start up a VM in like VirtualBox if you want to. There's tons of ways to use SSH, but I'm going to be doing something that's actually through Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is very identical to how a terminal for Mac will work. And it's also identical to how real Linux command line will work once you get into your system. So if I did a chmod to change the permissions so that I will get an error. If you see this error, which if you just downloaded it and did not do anything to it, you will see this error. SSH will not let you, your SSH local SSH client will not let you use this key because it's too open. The permissions say that anybody on your system can read this PIM files or this PIM file, and I'm not going to use it until you fix that. So chmod 600 aws.pim. 600 just means I can read, write, and execute it. That's what this 6 means. 0 means the group that I'm in has no, or the group that owns this file, ls-la aws personal. So the group is Craig B, the user's Craig B. The user can do everything to this. The group can do nothing to it, and everybody else that's not in the user group can do nothing to it. Can't read it, can't edit it, can't execute it. We'll talk more about permissions a little bit later, but just chmod 600 if you get this huge warning with tons of @ around it. And we're in. So we got about 3 minutes left. This talks a little bit about how to SSH, and this is as far as we got all this stuff done, added a route to our internet gateway, all that stuff. The rest of this talks about chmod, and then down here are some commands to run once you get in. So sudo apt update, sudo apt upgrade, sudo apt install Apache 2. I'm writing it all in one line for brevity. It's just going to take forever to do this. While this is going, does anybody have any questions before we get out of here today? I will try and stick around for a little bit once class is over if you guys gotta go, or if you want to hang out and ask more questions. That's all gravy. Could I talk about the quiz set for Tuesday? It should be set for Wednesday. Okay, all right. It's fair. It could have been Tuesday. It'll be at the end of class. It's, I think, let me see what it is. Let me switch back to the browser while I'm doing this. Courses, this thing, and quiz. So it's 12 points. It's, I forget how many questions. I think it's, hey, there's access code. That's great. I'm going to have to change that tonight. Let me just switch back to Sublime for a minute and change that access code. That's great that it showed that. Okay. And yeah, I think it's 2 points per question. So it's 6 questions. Get out of here and back to this. I'll go over more of it at the beginning of class. I need to, basically, I want to think about what all I've taught today, what all I'm going to teach, be able to teach through like half of class Wednesday, and then I'm going to modify the quiz to be pretty much those 2 topics. It'll be the stuff I've talked about. You may also want to read some of these links like the IPv4 Cider block, the types of IP addresses that are private networks. Don't really need to know exactly how to SSH. You will need to know what username to use to SSH in with. I'm not sure how we're going to view this recording. I will try and upload it to Canvas. I believe it's saving locally, and I might have to reach out to the Clemson online group to figure out exactly how to do that. I was also thinking about maybe just uploading it to YouTube as an unlisted video. Maybe? We'll see. I don't know. I will send out a note once I figure out how to upload this. Yeah, I should have checked cloud recording instead of local recording. So maybe I'll do cloud recording for the rest of these, and I'll try and figure out how to get this available to you all. And I'll send out a message in Slack when I figure that out. But for the rest of them, I'll do cloud recordings, and I'll try and get a link to you guys from here on out for those as well. Any other questions? It's 5:16. We're a minute over. If you guys need to dip, it's been a wonderful first day. If you guys don't need to dip, it's also been a wonderful first day. And then I'll stay on the line for about 10 more minutes. Then I'm going to stand up and stretch, and I'll be available on Slack. Thanks, AJ. You too. Any comments on the project we should know? I'll talk a little bit more about the project specifics at the beginning or middle of class tomorrow. We're most of the way there. We have Apache installed, so I'll talk about how to use Apache and a little bit about HTML and stuff like that. I'm thinking I'm going to bump the project out till Wednesday, though, just so that we have enough time for me to talk about stuff and for you guys to digest it, come back with questions, and then actually work on the project. So I'm going to think about it. Probably going to bump it out. I'll talk more about that on Wednesday. No problem.
I have a question.
Sure.
So for those of us taking networking this semester,
Mhm.
what are topics that you think that we should look at that we might not cover in networking that we will need in this class? Like immediately.
Like just the for now, IP addresses and ports. So the CIDRs, we've already kind of talked about that. You won't really be playing too much with it. You may get asked questions about it, but the notes that I have should have most of those answers. And really, you can Google stuff during your quiz. I don't care. So if you have not a great understanding of the Cider stuff that I've talked about so far, you can go read up on that. You can also Google stuff if you don't remember. Okay, is 16 this? Is 24 the part that's in the network or out of the network or whatever? Like, is that the part that stays as the same for all the IP addresses? Yes. But if you forget that, you can just Google it. Other things that you may need to know, we won't really get into TCP or DNS very much, except to know that it exists, and it's the transport layer for HTTP. So I'm going to try and give you guys a pretty good understanding of that. Just because even though a lot of people have taken networking, they're probably not going to remember all the specifics of it. And I'm going to try to get the head of networking at CCIT to come in and do a one-day talk sometime in the next 2 weeks. And he's going to give his life of a packet talk, where packet originates on a computer, flows all the way over the internet to another computer, and at what stage, what layers of the packet are being used, what layers of the OSI network model are being used. So that'll be a pretty good explainer as well. So I think you'll be okay. I'm just happy that more people understand networking this year than in previous years, but I'm not going to rely on that. I'm going to try and reteach everything that I think is relevant.
I heard you mention.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I heard you mention Node. What would we be doing with Node specifically?
We're going to use Node to write a RESTful web service at some point. So it'll actually connect to Redis. It'll do some user authentication. It'll allow you to create and delete records over a RESTful HTTP API. And eventually we're going to create a React front end to talk to that RESTful API in the project after that.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. Alex, what's up?
Yes, sorry. So I had a quick question. So I'm actually like in the middle of creating a React Native app.
Okay.
But it's Reason React Native actually, if you're familiar.
I haven't done too much React Native stuff. I don't know what Reason is, but go on.
I'm actually like trying to server side render my app. Yeah.
I feel bad for you.
Thanks. And I'm trying to understand, like, basically I'm using somebody else's component because I'm using GraphQL, and I'm trying to like get it communicating, and I have to use this like other component somebody wrote so that I can see the GraphQL errors. But
yeah,
basically I have to server-side render because there's something that I need to define as a JavaScript variable and with Express. But yeah, it's like a whole thing. But like I was trying to understand like exactly like when React and like React Native like spits out like the HTML, like where is that in the pipeline with like server-side rendering? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't totally understand how the server-side rendering stuff works. I believe it sends HTML blob updates, so maybe not the entire HTML document, but certain things that have changed. It sends those over a persistent TCP connection to the actual device, and then the device takes those and renders them, and then also goes and looks up any images or whatever's referenced there. But normally, if you have variables only available in Express, you should be able to send those down to React and do client-side rendering. I've done a lot of that where you have your React framework will go ask for a couple of variables when it starts up, and then use those variables to actually, like, it won't say, hey, tell me what my username and password is, but it'll be like, hey, I've already authenticated, here's my token, tell me what my username is. And it'll go, oh, you have a session variable already because you authenticated, sure, here's your username. And then you drop that username into the app, and the app can still client-side render. So I don't know.
Yeah, so basically, like, I guess what like I really don't understand at the end of the day is that like basically like the way it works then is that the Express gets all the JavaScript and then it turns it all into HTML and just sends that, right?
Right. But I mean, React even client side is just JavaScript turning stuff into HTML.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really fully understand it then. I don't know if that'd be too hard to explain really quickly, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you like dig into it a little bit, figure out like why you need to use Express to do that. Because at the end of the day, like we'll make a React app and we'll have it running in Node.js, because Node.js will be doing the compiling every time you touch a file. It'll recompile it. It'll tell your browser that it recompiled it, and your browser will fetch the new files. That works fine, but at the end of the day, if you're deploying this for like a real service, you can, instead of doing like a development build that recompiles and holds everything in memory on the server, you can just say, make me a minified packaged up build of this thing. And it just generates static HTML and JavaScript and CSS files. And you can take those files, you can drop them into any web server, you can put them on an S3 bucket that serves stuff out to the internet. You can put them wherever you want, they'll serve up files. And then that's your front end. It's just a bunch of static files. And then it talks to your back end over a REST or some other HTTP connection. Your back end can be PHP or another Node.js instance, but then it's more server client and not this, the server's also rendering what the client sees sort of thing, which just, it's already weird enough thinking about what the server's doing and what the client's doing, the asynchronicity between those two, and like the client may not know who the server is, or the server may not know who the client is, or may have to re-authenticate and may not have it in session. And then you're also now, on top of that complication, making the server also do client-side tasks like rendering. So I don't know. I haven't messed enough with native to know how it works.
Okay. Well, thanks anyway. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, if you read more and you have some more specific questions, drop me a line in Slack and I'll see if I can try and decode what docs you're looking at. All right. Anybody got anything else before I head out? I think the rest of you probably just left your Zoom windows open and left. Okay. If y'all need anything, send me a note on Slack. Bye.